That's what I do. I give them a list of titles, or I get them to make their own titles up. And then we say, right, okay, let's do one on that and see what comes up.
Welcome to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the place where teachers from around the world meet to share innovative ideas about music education. Listen and learn as we help you motivate your students, grow your income, expand your studio, and become a more creative piano teacher.
G'day everyone, it's so good to be back with you for another dose of your weekly piano teaching inspiration from the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. And this is episode number 99. Yes, I've almost hit triple digits and I'm pretty excited actually. After 2 years of pretty regular hard slog and work, it's been a lot of fun of course as well. We are almost at the 100 episode mark, so stand by next week for an episode that's a little bit different. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all my Inner Circle members listening today, and thanks to everyone around the world for tuning in. Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, I know that you're going to get a lot out of this interview today. My name is Tim Topham, and I'm the host of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, and this is the place where you can get your weekly dose of inspiration, ideas, and strategies to help you be the best teacher in the piano studio that you can possibly be. Today's show notes and a full transcript are available as usual at timtopham.com/episode 99. In today's episode, we're going to be chatting with one of the world's most loved composers. And we're going to be talking about teaching, inspiring, and working with students on the piano in the 21st century studio. My guest today will be well known to all listeners. She's a UK-based composer whose musical upbringing saw her learn recorder, piano, tenor horn, cello, and French horn. She's studied at the Trinity College of Music and toured professionally as an orchestral French horn player. She started composing for her own students back in the 70s and now has over 200 published collections, including the well-known Jazz and About and Upgrade series. What you might not know, however, is that she received 33 letters of rejection before Faber finally said yes, and she has a strong mantra to never give up on the things that you feel passionately about. Welcome to the show, Pam Wedgwood. How are you today?
Thank you, Tim. It's very nice to be here. It's pouring with rain here. I don't know what it's doing in Melbourne, but it's probably a bit nicer here.
Oh, look, it's chilly. We're heading into winter. We're kind of on the opposite seasons, of course. As I mentioned just before we signed on today, it was very refreshing to be doing this in my afternoon when I'm often interviewing people in America who, for the time zones, I have to get up quite early for. So thank you for joining us today. It's going to be a fun interview.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, so I'm keen to start at the beginning. It sounds like your composition all started as part of a need for your own students. And I think a few composers might actually start that way. Would that be right? How did you come into being a composer?
Yeah, it can be very frustrating when you know you've got a really keen pupil and you introduce them to tunes and things that you think they're going to like. And really all they want to do is something they're very familiar with, like a pop tune, or they're in that sort of adolescent sort of period where they really want to just coordinate with something they actually really recognise. And I couldn't find anything really apart from, at that time it was sort of Elton John, but Elton John was in such ridiculous keys that nobody could ever play it. So I started to rearrange Elton John a little bit so they can play things like that. And in the end, I thought, well, actually, I might as well just start writing my own tunes in the style of, something grabby that they could get a hold of. And that's exactly what I did. And I realised quite quickly after that they actually quite liked playing these, and they came back practising. They practised, which was amazing.
That's true. Sometimes the teenage students, I teach a lot of teenagers. I totally love that age group, but they can be a real challenge because they're not going to be as compliant as an under 10-year-old will be. And for good reason, they're starting to form their own identity. They have ideas of what they want to do and learn and what they like and don't like. And so we really have to, as teachers, engage with them and help them in that, I think.
Definitely. You have to steer them in the right direction. And the direction they want to go in, so you have to go with it until there's such times that they come out of it. They do eventually.
That's true. How do you go about finding out what your students, particularly that teenage group, like?
I just play them things, and you can get a reaction straight away. I think you probably know that. And most teachers would probably find that happening, that you get a reaction from a certain piece that you play, and you grab them right at the very, very moment.
Do these tend to be pieces that you've written, or will you sometimes play them a pop song of some sort?
Oh yeah, I try to do pick and mix, really. It's difficult when I write so much because I'm influenced by what I do. So I break out every now and again and just sort of think, well, there are lots of other people doing this. Let's see what else we can find here.
Yeah.
But they often say, can I play one of your pieces? Which makes it more tricky because then I have to keep going back to my pieces.
Well,
I get them off,
As many teachers will know, I'm a huge fan of your work. And I talked about you in a couple of my repertoire series on Facebook Lives, which I do each fortnight. And I think one of the big reasons your music is so engaging is because the chord progressions behind them somehow talks to that pop style. And so I wondered whether you consciously are influenced by pop music in the way that you create some of your piano solos.
I think I must be, really, because I know what you mean about the chord progressions.
They just sound cool. Kids just love the chord progressions.
Yeah, their ear is expecting it to happen, and it does.
Yes.
And then they're not put off because of that. Yeah, and I also like doing patterns because I think when you're teaching, to create a good pattern base is really important because they can get hold of it so much more quickly then. They've got something to. In a way, it's a sort of, I do it with unconsciously. I just do it. I don't know how it happens. Don't ask me.
Well, I will ask you just a couple of questions about your composing method a bit later. But I wanted to know, do you still teach? And if so, or even if not, what does a week look like for you these days?
Oh, yeah, I've still got quite a few pupils here. I just like teaching. I think once you do it, you can do it forever. And you learn so much as you're going along. And as I've got older, it's actually got more interesting in a way because I've got so much more experience now. And you can really, really go back into what you used to do and then build on what, your teaching knowledge. It's much better. The only thing that's happened to me since I've been a bit older is I'm less patient.
But is that with students learning things or students who don't practice, or a bit of both?
A bit of both, I think, really. But I've got mostly adult pupils now who I love teaching. I just find them really fascinating. I've got 5 French horn pupils still, so because that's my first instrument.
Are you still teaching the French horn as well?
Oh, yeah, I still play the French horn every now and again.
In fact, you've just written a concerto, haven't you?
Yeah, last year, 2 years ago, I wrote a concerto, yeah. Wow. I thought I ought to write because I love writing orchestral music. I've written quite a few scores for this, that and the other.
Right.
So that's another side to what I do that people actually don't probably realise.
Well, what are some of the other orchestral works you've written recently, Pam?
Well, I've just written a piece called Scott of the Antarctic, which is based on his life, to celebrate his life. We did it with the National Children's Orchestra.
Right.
And it was a really, really moving event for me because it was a full orchestra playing this, and we rehearsed it for a whole week. And so it came out really, really stunningly well. And then I did another one called The Captain and the Purple Lady, which is, I like to do story-based stuff, so you've got a good theme running through the whole thing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Good. Yeah.
It sounds like film music. Do you like listening to film music?
I love film music. Yeah. I think it's underrated art. Some of the film writers of today are absolutely genius, I think.
I had the pleasure of seeing Hans Zimmer live here in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago. For those who don't know, Hans is the composer behind Pirates of the Caribbean and Batman and Gladiator. And I mean, he's done so many different pieces. And I really didn't know what to expect, actually. I knew there would be an orchestra, but would he be up there in tails conducting or what? Anyway, it turns out, I don't know, have you seen the concert?
I haven't seen it, no, but I'll look it up.
Oh, and it's on YouTube. You can actually look at it, and he really does a best of, and it's literally a rock concert. It is big and loud and huge and lights, and it was truly an amazing experience, absorbing, rich experience. I really enjoyed it. So I totally agree. And I think perhaps, there's certain elements of film music in my mind, particularly from people like Hans Zimmer and the people that do the space kind of music as well. They use particular chord progressions which just are so rich and warm. I love it.
I think one of the best ones ever is John Barry.
Oh yeah, of course.
Some fantastic stuff coming from him. I mean, it's just unbelievably good. And people don't seem to talk about him, and yet he's there in the background on so many bits and pieces. Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
So just going back to a question I asked before, what does a week look like? Do you tend to, you're obviously teaching, do you speak and present and things as well?
Not so much these days. My week goes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, I have pupils. Thursday, Friday, I'm sort of writing.
Right.
Because it's difficult to try and do everything all the time. Mornings are spent often just writing. If I don't do anything that I think's any good by 12 o'clock, I just go and play somewhere. Go out to play, go and have a swim or play. I used to play tennis, but not anymore, but take my dog for a walk or do something else, And then my pupils obviously come when it's after school time.
Right.
So start again then.
And so with your composing at the moment, are you being asked by publishers to compose a particular set or series, or do you have full license as to, I'm feeling like composing this today?
Well, I do have full license about I'm feeling like composing this today, but often I'm decomposing.
Oh, that doesn't sound too good, Pam. What does that mean?
Well, I always say that to people when it's not going well,
Right.
I'm doing at the moment a book with Favour called How to Jazz, and it's part of the Jazzing About series. And in fact, my editor's coming in about an hour and a half from now to work on it with me. So I'll be really awake by the time she comes. That's good.
We should mention it is 7 a.m. for you when we started this interview, so I do appreciate you getting up early, extra early.
So working on that this morning. So that's my latest thing. That's been going on for the last 2 years, on and off.
Right.
It was going to be something else, and it keeps changing its format. So we've had to really make sure that we're in the right direction there.
And that sounds more like a how-to jazz rather than just a book of jazz music. Is that right?
Oh, it's trying to do all the fundamentals in a very, very easy to understand way. Because a lot of the jazz books are so complicated, you can't even start. They don't know how to do it. Because theoretically, you have to know quite a lot before you actually can progress to anything, really.
So you're trying to make it simple for all teachers, whether they've had jazz training or not, that they can take it and go, here's a taste for their students.
Yeah, and then that they can move on after that and progress to something. Maybe there'll be a book too. I don't know yet, but maybe. Yeah.
I imagine that you are probably pro teaching chords and progressions to students at a fairly early point in their training.
Yeah, I try to introduce them to making up their own chord progressions and trying to get them to listen, because most people just don't listen to what they're actually doing. If you can get them to actually listen to what they're doing, then they'll make a lot of progress. Especially the adults. They don't listen to what they're doing. They just play like, they're just looking, not using their ears, looking. So my task is to try and get them to listen.
And how do you do that?
Oh, various ways. I get them to play from memory a lot, because people don't like doing things from memory.
No, I put my hand up and I'm one of those people.
If it's not a natural thing for them to do, it's really hard. But you can train yourself to do that. And a lot of my adult pupils now can do chunks of music from memory, and they absolutely can't believe they can do that now. Then they're listening to what they're playing rather than looking to see what they've got to play. I think that's one of the main things.
And what if they've composed their own progression or some kind of music? Do you find that they also don't listen as well then, even though they're not looking at music, they're probably looking at their hands and listening? Or do you still find they struggle then too?
I think they struggle a bit too, but it is a gradual thing that gets better and better as you go along. If you can start them off really early on by doing that, then it becomes a natural sort of thing for them to be able to do. Some kids and some people do memory completely naturally.
Mm.
They just do it, and for one reason or another. I mean, I've always been a person who've had to work at memory to actually memorize stuff. And as you get older, of course, it gets it gets harder.
Mm.
So you just have to keep trying, and it's good for the brain and everything else if you can do that.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in the power of effective questions from a teacher to get kids to think about what they're doing rather than having us tell them what they're doing. So, my kids find it so frustrating when I don't tell them what's wrong with something, but I'll stop. Once they've played something, I'll get them to think. What are we trying to achieve here? Let's say we're playing a scale. What is the ultimate scale? How should it sound? How should the rhythm be? Whatever, all that. Then how did yours sound? Could you pick up anything that we can improve? Let's have another listen. And you're absolutely right. So many times they just haven't listened to what they have played. It's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it is. It's true. And sometimes you think, how can they do that how can they make that mistake because they're not listening to what they're doing?
Yeah. So you use memory as a technique to help that. Any other? And I like using questions. Any other techniques on that? Because it is a really fundamental thing.
Yeah, I sometimes put myself. I get them to sit in my chair, and I play something badly, or as badly as I can manage it, and then they have to do a complete crit on what I'm doing. Like, what could you do better? How could that be better? And they have to listen then because they're trying to do be the teacher, and that's very important when they change seats. Suddenly they're doing something else. So that's another quite a good way of doing it.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And very simple. Very simple.
Yeah, put them on the spot, really. Yeah.
So can you remember your first composition and what that was like and what instrument it was for?
I can remember it very well. When I was at school, I belonged to a school band, and this was probably when I was about 11, I would think. And I was playing the tenor horn then, I think. I think that was, that was one of the instruments I played at the beginning. And I only played that because somebody had found it in a chicken run. And that was the one that was given to me. And it was all dirty and cobwebby and terrible. Anyway, got it going and started to learn the tenor horn at school. And then I was playing in the school band and I thought, you know what, I'm going to write something for the school band to play. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, really. So I got some manuscript paper and started to write out all the lines, you do, all the instrumentation, and did it like a proper score. And I did this piece, it was a march from something, and it was just like really bad handle. It's dreadful. Well, I mean, they played it, but it didn't quite do what I wanted it to do.
I'm so impressed you can remember this.
Yeah, I remember it really well because it's so terrible, really. But the good thing was I enjoyed doing it, and I think that was the start of me. And then I used to write things for my sisters because they all played, and we used to do things as a family, and I used to write bits and pieces for that. So I've always been creative. I like being creative. I can't exist without being creative. Yeah.
And it was obviously the start of your composing skill set building process, I guess. Yeah, I mean, no one's ever going to do their best work the first time. And I have a feeling this is something that kids these days struggle with more and more, that they can't instantly do something. And that's one thing that makes learning an instrument quite a challenge.
Okay. Yeah, they all want a quick fix for everything. Quick fixes. And there is no such thing as a quick fix. It's bloody hard work, really, everything. You just have to get on with it. But, yeah. I mean, I studied composition at college then later on. So I did have a bit of an inroad then. Then I gave that up after about probably a year and a half because I was too busy doing all the other things. And then when my boys were small, I started, and I was teaching, as I said before, doing the Elton John bit. That's when I really started to write because there was a reason to do it then. I wanted to stop being a French horn player, really, and get on with something else. So that's what I did do, yeah.
So now that you're quite a skilled composer, how do you generally start? Is it melodic harmonic, rhythmic, or something else entirely?
Oh my God, that's a question and a half, really. I sit at the piano and usually fiddle about, to be honest. If I've got a title in my head, that is my best way of starting, because that gives me a feeling for the mood, the style I'm going to write it in, and all those things, all those elements that come together in the piece. If I've got a storyline in my head, then that makes life a lot easier.
And then you'll doodle around on the keys until something emerges, or you leave the house and go for a walk because you hit 12 o'clock.
Exactly that. But very often it comes quite quickly. Don't ask me why or how, I just don't know. If I'm in the right mood, I can write a piece in 5 minutes, from beginning to end. And I'm thinking, why is that's happened so quickly? And it's really good, this one. And then I'll spend perhaps 3 days on another piece, and you get there in the end, but it's not as spontaneous. It's very weird. I can never work it out myself.
But a good tip, nonetheless, for teachers, if their students are enjoying the composing process but maybe having trouble getting started, to perhaps give them some titles to work with. That could be a good trigger. For some students, might not work for everyone.
That's exactly what I do. I give them that's what I do. I give them a list of titles, or I get them to make their own titles up. And then we say, right, okay, let's do one on that and see what comes up, And often that's a really good way of doing it, because they can be completely creative then and not worry about the restraints of doing anything else. And that's what I like. I like that.
I really like that. And then once they've chosen, so let's say they've written a list of titles, perhaps the next lesson you work with them to choose one of them, I assume. What's your approach then with a student? Let's say a student who's been playing for a couple of years has some ability at the keyboard.
Yeah. I mean, they may need a little starter help, I often give them like a starter, maybe a thread of melody or just a bass line. Say, right, let's just use those 3 chords and let's just do a little melody on top of that and see what happens. And then that gives them a good start, because some of them have not got the ability to start even. Some kids do really well, but others struggle with that. But to give them a starter is a good way of doing it.
And then as they play and explore that idea that you've given them, I assume then rhythm will become more apparent and meter and things like that, and you'll be able to build it into, give it some form and things like that.
Yeah, and also they can learn a lot of theory by just doing that.
I
learn
agree.
Notation, what all the rests mean, and because they don't actually take that on board properly until they really have to. And then they understand then a lot about keys and where we can go from one to the other, and the relationships between things. I think it's the best way of learning, really, theory, is to actually do that.
Yeah, I've always said that.
I work with Sibelius with some of them, and we do things on Sibelius because that's really much more up their street. They can really, really identify with that. And of course, they get instant playback and they can hear what they've done.
And Sibelius, in case anyone listening isn't familiar with that, is a online notation. It's not online, is it? Software, notation software, yes. Yeah. And used pretty much, it's an industry standard, I think, isn't it?
Oh, no, definitely, yeah.
So, look, you've written some incredibly engaging, exciting music that I know kids love. As you say, it gets them practicing, which I think is a huge benefit for us as teachers. What do you think makes a really engaging student piano piece?
Right. Well, when you first play a piece to a student, you get this reaction. You can see it in their eyes. I'd really like to play that piece. It's probably because it's got a very strong, engaging melody, like an earworm. So it's something that's gone in their brain, and they can still remember that tune, having just heard it that once, and they would want to redo that again. I think it's the melody, really, and maybe the movements of the chords a little bit. It's a difficult one, but I think mainly getting a really strong melody, that they can really, that's the first thing. And then the other things come later, I would think. Yeah.
And I guess the richness of the harmony can be part of it, or the rhythm, if it's a Knights Charging kind of title, and you've got the fun 6/8 rhythm and things. Certain students will be captured by that, won't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Would I be right in thinking, Pam, that your upgrade series is perhaps the best known of the work that you've done for piano teachers?
Yeah, probably. It sells the most books.
Yeah. And what was the genesis of it? How did that come about?
Well, I can tell you exactly how that came about. Me waiting in music shops, listening to people requesting things over the counter. And I kept hearing this phrase, is there anything you've got that we can use between the grades? And that kept coming back to me. And I thought, do you know what? There is a marketplace here. I'll write some tunes, and we call them Upgrade. And since then, we haven't looked back, really. It's just been one of those series that's just caught on. Because it does fill up the holes between exam-orientated music.
And you're based in the UK, which has a heavy emphasis on exams, as Australia and many parts of the world do. Perhaps less in the States. These pieces, though, while they are designed to go between perhaps the serious stuff of exams, the thing I like about them is there's still plenty of pedagogy to be taught through them. So there's still phrasing, there's timing, there's syncopation, all those kinds of things. Do you consider the pedagogical aspects of the music as you're writing it, or is that a secondary consideration?
I think it happens automatically because I like to incorporate things that they're going to learn from, with the patterns and the keys and all of that. I think it happens naturally with me because I know what I'm trying to teach them, and I'm trying to get that in the piece really a little bit, so they're doing it without thinking. It is good to get certain aspects of technique introduced into pieces. Holding on one note while you're playing the other, and a bit of pedaling technique here and there, and just occasionally just something different. Yeah.
And that said, there's no harm in a piece having just being purely for fun too, I think, as well.
Yeah. That's how I do it, really.
What do you think for piano teachers who are trying to encourage creativity in their students, and perhaps they're very much from a classically trained background? What are some of the things that they should be either teaching explicitly or encouraging their students to do to help?
Maybe studying a few really groovy chords, getting some really nice seventh chords going.
And how would you do that with a student, Pam?
Well, I teach them about the chords in my How to Jazz book. It's all in there.
Right.
It's all in there for anybody who wants to have a look at that later on, about how you can introduce all of those chords in a simple way, so they got a real fulfillment of what they sound really groovy when you go from one to the other. Yeah, I mean, I don't spend huge amounts of time sort of teaching them that. I guess I introduce the pieces and say, well, this is what we've been doing. This is what you've been studying, that chord there. Look, it's all over this piece. Let's find them all, and try and do it from that side of things. But yeah.
Well, I definitely like that approach of unpacking the things that have been used to put the piece together before you learn it, and then finding all those elements. It's very much the simultaneous learning approach of Paul Harris, I think, that kind of thing.
I think that's a natural way of teaching myself. That's good. Yeah.
All right. So now, quick question. What are your top 3 favourite compositions that you've written? If you could narrow it down.
Well, that's really hard.
Wait, because you've got 200 books and they each have minimum 10 pieces in. I know it's a lot of.
I've got a catalogue here of Pam Wedgwood, and it's pages and pages of stuff. And I'm thinking, how did that happen?
Are there any standouts that you remember writing over time?
I think the very simple ones. I really like writing a simple, effective tune. And one of the tunes that I really, really liked doing, and I wrote in about 5 minutes, was a tune called Pink Lady. Do you know that one?
Pink Lady? No.
sort of thing goes on like that.
Nice.
But it came so quickly, and it was inspired by I had an au pair girl who used to look after the kids when I was working so hard, and she came down the stairs with pink hair. So I just wrote this tune, and it's been the most popular tune on the planet. It's been arranged for, you name it, it's been arranged for everything. That was a bit of a goodie, you know.
Is that one of the upgrade pieces, Pam?
It's in the very first Jazzing About book that I ever wrote.
Right.
It's called Jazzing About for Piano. Very first one. It's about grade 3 or ish. Yeah. And that was my adolescent piano book. That was the very first one that I came together, you know, with all the pieces I want to play. I think that probably stands out. What else? Oh, another one, The Man with a Crooked Stick, which is in the After Hours series.
Oh, yes. I do know the After Hours series, yeah. Can you remember the main bit of it that you could play us?
Right. This is about, I was on a walking holiday in Derbyshire, and I came across a little bench, and there was an inscription on the bench to the man with a crooked stick. And that sort of grabbed me, and I wrote him a little poem. Shall I read you the little poem?
Please.
Yeah, it says, "He sits for hours on that seat over there, the man with a crooked stick and an open stare. His life has gone, he wants the answer. He stares and wonders why."
Oh, wow.
And then I wrote this little tune, and it was quite, well, I won't play all of it because it's quite long, but I'll just give you the opening bit. And it goes on like that. And I quite like that one because it's again very, very quick.
Sorry, you wrote it quickly, or it's short?
It very quickly.
Right.
Yeah, it came a few minutes, I think. Yeah.
A few minutes. Wow. I instantly thought TV show theme. That was what I was thinking as I heard that. I thought it'd be perfect.
Yeah. A lot of tunes that I write could be very commercialised.
Yeah,
you know?
Totally.
I don't mind that. People say, "Oh, you write very commercial sounding music." I said, "Well, why not?" It's the thing that people want to play, you know.
Exactly.
I mean,
it's appealing.
All the stuff to everybody else. You know? Yeah,
absolutely. Oh, that was great. Lovely to hear you play too. Thank you for that. Now, you've mentioned your boys a couple of times. One of them, at least, is now writing himself. I think I'm right in saying.
Well, they're both very, very prolific composers, actually.
Are
now.
they really? So this is Oliver is one.
Yeah.
And who's your other son? What's your other son's name?
He's Sam. He lives in Brisbane, near Brisbane, on Sunshine Coast.
Oh, he's on my side of the world. Oh,
he's
that's
on your
right.
side.
I remember you saying that now, actually, in one of our emails.
In fact, I'm going over to see them in a few weeks' time for a month, yeah. So
oh, wow.
I'll be over.
Are you coming to Melbourne?
Well, no, I'm not coming to Melbourne, but we could probably do a Skyping session.
Here we go. So you've got Sam in Brisbane and Oliver's in London still?
Yeah, Sam is working for Audio Network, which is a big global film television company. And he writes, he's just done a lot of, he's just got 2 contracts for 2 adverts, so he's really commercials. He's very, very glad about that.
Wow.
Because that's given him quite a big step up. Yeah. He writes superb orchestral music. Really, really, he's got a talent. I wish I could do that the way he does it. So really proud of him. And my other son, Ollie, he's a brilliant jazz writer and player. And he set up his own company called Ollie's Piano Sheets. And it's an online company that he can supply. He writes all the music for that. But, they're both, I always knew they'd both be doing it. So they couldn't, it was inevitable, really.
And I found out about them through Eleanor Cobb, I think, who is publishing or was publishing them. Yeah. And that was great to see some of their work there. And I thought, Wedgwood, that has to be a connection. And then I joined all the dots together. Yeah. We'll pop a link to Ollie's piano sheets in the show notes for today. Does Sam have a website of his own? Do you know?
Yeah, he does, but he doesn't write like the way that Ollie and I write with sort of educational stuff. He's much more big He's out about it, really.
I'd be fascinated to hear it. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
I'll find him on YouTube or something.
Yeah, just give Sam a buzz and see, and then he'll tell you what he does.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so
well, you must be incredibly proud to have your sons in the same industry.
Oh, it is. It's marvellous because they're very nice, and they often asking me for advice, about what shall I do? It's any good, what do you think about this? And that's great because, and likewise, I send them my stuff and say, look, what do you think about this? And they give me a good crit, and then I give them a good crit. So it works both ways.
That's wonderful. Did you teach them when they were young?
We started off, my husband's a musician as well. And we started off trying to teach them ourselves, but actually it doesn't work terribly well. So we knew enough musicians to be able to employ a jazz musician to teach Ollie. Great jazz right from the start. So he had a very good beginning. And Sam went to Wells Cathedral School, was a trumpet scholar to begin with.
Oh, wow. That's an amazing music school.
Yeah, he just plays everything, Sam. He just picks something up and he can just do it. It's very annoying for the rest of us. And then, so, no, we didn't really teach them later on. They got going in that direction.
But obviously, lots of encouragement. And look at them now. That's just brilliant news. Well, look, we might wrap things up, Pam. It's been an absolute delight speaking with you today. Thank you again. Would you like to just let us know, you've got your jazz, what was the title of your new series that you're working on at the moment?
How to Jazz.
How to Jazz. So when's that due to be released?
It should be coming out, where are we now? It should be maybe back in the end of the year, I would think, September, October. That'll be trying to do it for the academic year here, which should be starting in September, hopefully. Yeah, that's why we're having it.
And any other things in the pipeline?
Oh, there's always something in the pipeline. I just love writing, basically. I'm starting a new orchestral suite. That's probably my next thing I will be doing. But that's for my own amusement, I just get such a kick out of doing that. So that's great. And probably a few more piano pieces here and there.
I bet. And I hope so. I look forward to reading through them, playing them, and introducing them to my students, because I know how much they love the music that you create. So thank you again, Pam. Thank you for all that you do for us piano teachers. Providing great repertoire that we can use with our students makes our jobs that much easier. So we appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Tim, for the great support I get from that side of the ocean. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. We'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for listening to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. We'd love to help take your teaching to the next level as a member of our supportive community. Use the coupon Piano Podcast for $100 off an annual membership of Tim's Inner Circle today. To find out more, head to timtopham.com/community.